All right, that's all the fun and games right now. There'll be more fun and games later on when Adelina takes over. And speaking of Adelina, I'm going to ask her to come up and introduce our featured speaker tonight.
Thank you, Derek. Hi, everyone. I hope you have enjoyed the conference so far. My name is Adelina. I live in Toronto. I'm a grateful member of ACA. Hi, and you are in for a treat. I have the tremendous pleasure to introduce Sue V, who has been my fellow traveler for many, many, many years in Toronto, and my service sponsor, and my guide and my mentor. And I have no words to express the love that I have for you, and just witnessing how you radiate love into the world, and everything that you touch with love, and it blossoms. So this has been my experience of Sue. From the moment I met you, you made the Toronto Intergroup and Toronto ACA community blossom, and then the global members blossom, and then carrying the message by publishing the ACA literature blossom, and your tremendous work as a trustee in ACA Board of Trustees, and now our humble and grateful chair of the board. So beyond grateful to be here and introduce you. You are in for a treat.
Hello, everybody. I think before we start, why don't we say an ACA Serenity Prayer? All righty. So let's all take a deep breath. And let us say our ACA Serenity Prayer in whatever language or form that's calling your heart, and make beautiful music together. God, grant me the serenity to accept the people I cannot change, the courage to change the one I can, and the wisdom to know that one is me. Thank you. I am Sue V, and I'm speaking as your grateful adult child. Hi. And as Adelina said, I'm from Toronto, Canada. And before I start with my journey now, I will go back to the very beginning of when I was born. And I would say to you that I have been in the AA family for 57 years. 57. I've been in Alateen 55 years ago. And I'll talk about my journey. So it's been an incredible journey, a life journey that I'm still learning. And I asked a spiritual teacher a long time ago, when does it stop? When are you recovered? And the answer came back, as long as you got blood in your vein, you're going to still be recovering and healing all your life. But it does get easier. And it can be painful, but it is easier. There's hope. I think that's the difference I have in my life, hope. So let me start from the beginning. I was born into a family where my parents, my father came from a hugely violent, dysfunctional family. So much so that he tried to escape, and what he did is he went into the military, and he went overseas, and he came home, as I understand it, and as I experienced, with post-traumatic stress disorder from that. So he had double trauma. He married very young. He married my mother. He was the eldest of 5. My mother was the youngest of 9. And I think the secrets went to the grave, because in her family, there were 4, 5 people that were in AA, and you couldn't find out why. It was very quiet. The only thing I knew is that my Nana drank. And I never saw that side of her, but I'm told that that's what it was. So I'm convinced there was some things going on there. And when I was a child, I couldn't sleep. I got to tell you, for the first 20 years of my life, I really didn't sleep. When we had a lot of violence in our home, we had a lot of abuse, physical, mental, emotional, and even sexual. And I would tell you that I couldn't sleep in my bed. I would go outside and sleep in bushes. I would even remember going on behind when my mother was in a hospital. They couldn't find me, my father and the babysitter, and I was underneath the bathroom sink, and I had toilet paper rolls, and I was totally asleep when they took me out of there because I had to hide. And that was my life as a child. It wasn't always that bad. There, you know, abuse goes up and down. There's some really positive things that happen and some happy moments. But the abuse is really violent and very, very painful. I'm the eldest of 8, and I spent the first 20 years of my life trying to save my siblings from the fates. And I got to tell you that I still was working with my siblings in my 20s, my 30s. It was only when I came into ACA that I recognized that even though I might be doing some good things, I was also enabling and I was codependent. And I needed to change that. I would say that by the time I was 18, I had tried university nursing. I couldn't bear to be in nursing. Here's the funny thing. I didn't want to be around sick people. And isn't that funny? Isn't that funny? Yeah. I couldn't stand it anymore. And so I was trying to figure out my life. I was intervening with things going on. My parents decided they had enough of me. And they said, your sister's driving you to the bus stop. Good luck. And I was homeless at that point. Thankfully, I had one friend that I could call, and I did. And she graciously said, come on over. I was fortunate and blessed from the higher power because her mother had an alcoholic father. She knew what I was going through. So we agreed I was going to rent their Chesterfield in the basement while I figured out my life. Higher power has a very strange sense of humor. Guess where I got a part-time job? The Teachers Federation. I was an admin in the Teachers Federation. They nagged me for 1.5 years to go back to university. They showed me how to do it by myself, getting government grants and loans and things like that. And I put myself through university. And that was amazing. And I would say to you that after university, I started to go into jobs. And guess what? I found I had an ACA superpower. Do you know what I mean? ACA superpower. What was it? My ACA superpower was I could be in highly dysfunctional teams and groups, and everybody else was coming out in stretchers, and I was surviving. And the frame I had, my mother, God bless her, you know, she kept telling me that when I was young, and I remember that, and I used that for myself. And so I was able to go into some pretty dysfunctional places and survive and even thrive. And I learned a lot about myself then. I was also a superpower multitasker. I could multitask. Over responsibility, I'm there. I got to tell you the amount of work I was doing as well. I got rewarded. These are positive things. They want you to keep doing this. And at the same time, guess what happened when I was starting my career, and I vowed I'd be financially independent. I would never depend upon anybody else. I never wanted to be homeless again. And so I really threw myself in there, workaholism. And at the same time, guess what was happening with my siblings back home? They were being thrown out too, one at a time. Guess where they came? Me, their little mom. And so I took them all in one by one, and I helped them get apartments, and I helped talk to them about where they could go. And they survived, and they thrived many times. But half of my siblings ended up in AA, also in NA, and a couple ended up with some mental health serious issues. So we didn't come out of this lightly. And I would say that I was busy doing that, and I vowed, guess what? Never to get married, never to have children. I already raised 7 siblings. I wasn't going to do this again. And higher power, fell in love with a wounded soul just like me from a violent past, just like me. We made a pact, and we said, never again will we ever do this to one another. Guess what happens? We start having children, and he gets triggered, I think. Now I know that. And he starts becoming abusive when he's trying to so-called discipline. And I have to stop that, and I do. But it's a tug and war. And then the verbal abuse started happening. And I didn't understand that because I was so looking for the physical abuse. I missed the verbal abuse for so many years. I thought, oh, he's just having a hard day. Oh, he's very vulnerable. Because I was actually doing really well. And I thought, oh, he's feeling insecure. Let's try and help and do all that wonderful thing. And I loved him. And I stayed longer than I should have. And during this period of time, you got to know, I went to Alateen in my teens. And I also had a summer job. Guess what? In a family counseling center. Boy, did they recognize me. They offered me free counseling. They said, where's your family? We'll bring them in too. They did. My father walked out, unfortunately, in the middle of it, and my mother shortly after. But I kept my counseling up, and that kept me alive. Because when I was a teenager in that period of time, I wanted to commit suicide. I was that desperate that I thought, I've had it with this planet. I'm gone. And the only reason I didn't commit suicide is I had an experience that showed me that I couldn't do suicide. And I'm not going to explain it here, but if you ever want to ask me, you can. And so I agreed I would continue, but at the same time, I was being thrown out of the house, and I was trying to find my way of life. And so I said, okay, let's find how we can do it. I tried counseling. I tried self-help. I tried spiritual and personal development. And I got to tell you, it really helped me. I looked terrific. We had an elder in our local intergroup, and he said, damn, we look good when we dress up. And we do. And my false self was looking pretty good. And so I would say that, it's been a journey. I've learned a lot about myself. And I've helped my family. I've helped some friends when we're doing this. But I didn't know about ACA. So why? And I just didn't reconnect with that. And the funny thing is, when I was in my last year of high school, we had to do family studies project. Guess what I wrote about? It was in 1974. I wrote what happens to the children of alcoholics. I wrote that, and I researched it with CAMH, which is our Center of Addiction and Mental Health Research. And it helped me. All these little bits helped me. When I was being successful in my career, though, I understood there was something wrong with me. What was wrong with me? My inside thoughts didn't match the outside world. I went into a performance appraisal with my boss, who was lovely, and I was absolutely convinced she was going to fire me, or she was going to find something wrong with me. The reason I know that my thoughts aren't accurate is when I walked out of there, she offered me a raise, a bonus, and recommended me for a promotion. Talk about extreme opposite. I understood then that I really had a problem. And I tried all the other books, etc., that we were doing in counseling and stuff. And it was helping, but I kept sabotaging. I'd go really, really good and sabotage. And I thought, what the heck is going on with me? And at the same time, I'm trying to get a career going. I've got the husband and the kids going. And that starts to get really bad. I go back into counseling, and my husband and I have to separate. He ends up with a degenerative brain disease. He dies. I'm trying to save him. And he dies. And he dies at 47, and I have 2 small children who've been through some trauma. Talk about double shame. I found that I was in the same situation that I had as a child, and I brought 2 young children into it. And one of the things I really didn't want to do is bring this disease to somebody else, because I knew it was a disease. Don't forget, I've been in the AA family for 57 years. I've gone to all the medallions. They actually said, do you want to join us at one point? I said, I have a problem. I can't drink. It makes me sick. And when I started with ACA, which I'll get into, is that I went to them and said, I found my own fellowship. It's called ACA. So it was really quite funny when I went back to the tribe. And so as I'm dealing with all of that, I'm raising my kids to the best I can. We've got counseling. I got them into counseling, and we just talked about it recently. And they said, Mom, you know, a lot of people don't get counseling, but it really did help, but we hated it. I said, I know you hated it. I said, but didn't you love the counselor? She got you to draw pictures and play games, and you didn't even know it was therapy. And I said, and guess what? You got an ice cream cone after each time that we did it. And so it really did help. And they were going well. I was thinking I was going well. Menopause hits, hormones. And the other thing that hits, my children are now teenagers. What's my worst nightmare? That they could then turn to alcohol and drugs. And I would die if that happened. I really thought I would. And they started experimenting with the drugs and alcohol. And one night, it went too far. And it went too far to the point I had to call the police. And I didn't know if my son was alive or dead. I can tell you I died a million deaths in that moment. And he did live. He did recover. He was experimenting. He's a great guy. He's doing a wonderful life. And I would say to you that inner teenager meets physical teenagers. Not good. Don't let it ever happen. I can tell you, my inner teenager was ready to throw them all out, and just like I was thrown out. And my sister says, "Are you hearing yourself?" I said, I know, I won't do it. And so what drove me into ACA is all of a sudden I was talking to someone about what was going on, and I was falling apart, and everybody thought I was crazy. And he said, you know, my parents were alcoholics, and I kind of know how that feels. And it rang a bell with me. Remember I wrote a paper a long time ago? For some reason, it came back, and it said, why don't you Google adult children of alcoholics? So I did. And when I Googled it, and I found a meeting that was 30 minutes away, and it was going on in another hour. So I got my kids some dinner, and I left, and I went to the ACA meeting. And I got to tell you, when I walked into the rooms and I saw the 12 steps, it was like I came home again, because that was in Alateen. That's in all the AA meetings that I was going into. And I saw the 12 steps, and I thought, oh, I know this. And I cried through most of the meeting. But it was when I saw the laundry list that my heart broke open. I thought, I'll swear, holy hell, who knows? Who knows what's going on in my brain like that BRB did? And it really made an impression on me. And so I was fortunate. I didn't know how privileged I was. I was able to buy a BRB. Do you know how privileged that is? I didn't know how privileged that is until I became the global chair for Asia and Africa and other parts of the world, where some people would go to jail if they were trying to get books. And it was a privilege, and I'm so grateful. And so I did that, and I came to the meetings, and I would say to you, I value our newcomers and our newcomer greeters. If you ever get a chance to be a newcomer greeter, please do that. Because there was a gentleman at the end of the meeting that came to me after my sobbing and said to me, can I give you a hug? And I said, yes. And he patted my back, and he said, how could you be reacting any other way than how you are right now based on what's happened to you in your childhood, your home? Keep coming back. It works it. And that made all the difference in the world for about a week. That was the only person who didn't think I was crazy and needed to go into a psych ward. And I kept coming back. I was also very blessed by the higher power, because guess what? In month 2, a yellow workbook study was going on. And the yellow workbook study started, and I threw myself into that. And my intergroup in Toronto does regular 12-step studies for our groups, and also for outside as a part of an outreach, and it's made all the difference. And it took everything in me to stay in that 12-step study because it was very harsh. My inner children was saying, I don't like this. We're not to blame. We didn't do anything wrong. What about us? And I kept coming back into the 12-step studies and talking with all the fellow travelers. I was lucky. I got a sponsor. There weren't a lot of sponsors. And she helped me through the 12 steps. And when I finished the 12 steps, what did she say to me? You've graduated. You've given you what I got. I don't know anything else but this, and I want you to help me now. She introduced me to co-sponsoring. So now I'm in co-sponsoring. But guess what? I still want the laundry list, and nobody knows much about the laundry list. Some brave soul, very raw, soul and starts a book, starts a study, and it's the laundry list workbook. Because don't forget, I'm old. We only have the BRB, and the Strengthening My Recovery, and the yellow 12-step book just came out. So we didn't have the laundry list workbook. We didn't have this loving parent guidebook stuff. So I went to the laundry list study for Tony that he was putting on, and he used the BRB references as well, and it changed my life. All of a sudden, I understood why I was so angry with police and authority figures and teachers and whatnot. I thought, oh my God, that's me. Anytime anyone was sharing, that's me. And so I started to become aware of that, and I started to heal. And actually, my kids noticed, my friends noticed that I was different. They weren't so afraid of my reactions, and the focus was on me. And the early days, and still today, I would say, if I'm starting to obsess about someone or something, what am I distracting myself from? That's what it is for me. And so I know the moment I do that, I got to be careful and go back into my recovery. The other thing we did is that in our local intergroup, they kept talking about, well, this is my 3rd study, this is my 4th study, this is my 5th study. I said, what the hell? How many studies do you have to do in this program? And I didn't understand it, and I thought, 1 is bad enough. But you know what? People wanted to have 12-step studies. I helped support it, and I became a participant in it. And I have done 8 12-step studies. I don't think I hit the record. I think there are a few others ahead of me. I also, when the laundry list workbook came out in my 5th year, I went into a laundry list workbook study. Our intergroup decided, let's see who wants to come. So we took a cross-functional thing. A couple of members from all of the groups went into the laundry list study, and we did it together. I can tell you it made all the difference in the world to our fellowship. And good thing, because shortly after that, we were co-hosting the 2018 ABC and AWC. And guess what? Most of those folks that were coming from the volunteers were coming from that study because they understood the value of it. And so it was amazing. But I would tell you this, is that I said to my home group, beware when I start this study, I'm going to start to cry. And they said, oh, Sue, not you. You're not going to cry. We haven't seen you cry. I cried for the first 2 years in the program. But they hadn't seen me. I'm in my 5th year. And sure enough, the tears started. I started crying before meetings, during meetings, after meetings. This was the other laundry list. Oh, my God. And one brave soul said, can I ask permission to crosstalk with you for a second after the meeting? I said, yes, what do you want to say? He said, oh, my God, you're a crier. And I said, yeah, I warned you. And so we did the laundry list study. In between that, what I learned for myself as well is in our program, around the 2nd year, everybody started disappearing from the program. It's like they graduated or something. And I thought, well, does that mean I go too? And my spirit tapped me on the shoulder and said, I don't think so, Sue. I think you're going to stay. And I said, okay, well, I need to do something more than my meeting groups, because it took me 6 months, but I started to do service in my meeting groups. And in the 8th month, I even went out for coffee after. I didn't trust anybody, so I went out for coffee after. And so I thought, if I'm going to stay, I need to do more than my meeting group. And at the same time, our intergroup was suffering. Tradition violations, all sorts of crazy stuff was going on, and it was dying. And so I offered to be of service there. And we spent many years rebuilding it, but it's flourishing now. And what we did was not just the traditions. I said to them, I'm really into this loving parent chapter 8 stuff. I'm living it. I'm loving it. Got to bring it in. And we started having a little script about bringing in your loving parent to your business meeting, and had some traditions and the commitments of service. Don't you know? I'm known for that one. And that changed everything in our meetings. The dysfunction didn't come back in. We were able to manage it. Doesn't mean we didn't have tough conversations. We did, especially when it came to the 2018 AWC and other things. And so that felt good. The other thing that I did in the middle of that is before the 2018 AWC is my AA family. They said, why aren't you at the Ontario Regional Conference? We've got like 3,000 or 5,000 people coming in from AA, Al-Anon, and Alateen. I said, I don't know. Why don't I ask them? And this was before the intergroup exploded. And I said, why don't we go? And they said, I don't know. Why don't you put a business proposal together? Don't you forget, I got a business management degree. So I said, okay, I'll do that for you. I did a business management proposal to go there. And we got the funding, and we went. And that was in 2012, and they've still been going strong, except for COVID. And what we found is we met the ACAs before the BRB existed. They started coming back into the rooms. We did newcomer meetings. We had so many tears and laughter, newcomer kind of stuff, and it was beautiful. What happened as well is we started to grow like crazy. People wanted to start new meetings. They wanted to start 12-step studies, etc. They didn't know how. And so I said, well, if you can read, you can lead. But let's look, can you get a coordinator? Let's get a coordinator to help us with all this stuff. And everybody started to step up to be coordinator beyond just the intergroup meetings. Because don't forget, intergroup had 12-step studies regularly. We had someone doing it. But we started adding to that and starting adding to new meetings. And so I would say to you that ACA saved my life. I would say to you, ACA saved my relationship with my children that would not exist today without ACA. They aren't in the program. They're 29 now and 33. They talk the language, though, and maybe someday they will come in. And we do talk about abandonment. And I've made my amends with them because I abandoned them with my workaholism and my stuffing down my own feelings. And I would say to you that we've had conversations about inner children. And get this, before ACA, I could recognize my siblings acting like 3-year-olds, but I couldn't see it in myself. And so when I came into ACA and started reading the Chapter 8, which is what we had, I found out that I have inner children, don't you know? And I got lots of them. And I started working with that. And I come from a meditation background, so I accompanied that. And Loving Parent Guidebooks here, how awesome is that now? Really awesome. I'm in my first Loving Parent Guidebook study, by the way, and I'm loving it, and I'm growing. And I would say that it's just never ending. The other thing I would say, what have I learned in ACA? I would say what I've learned is that my triggers are gifts of healing. My triggers are a treasure map to my wounds that are deeply, deeply embedded in me. And my laundry list traits are actually the doorway to my inner child. And in fact, what I've done with my program, and I've shared it with others, is that the laundry list are my inner children, each and every one of them. And so when I notice something's happening with me, I go to my loving parent and my inner child. How old are you, sweetheart? That sounds familiar, right? It's in the Loving Parent Guidebook. And so it made all the difference in the world, and my inner child would act up. I remember I had to do this big talk, 500 people for business. I'd done it many, many times. And all of a sudden, the inside drugstore of worry, anxiety, and fear was kicking in. And I was getting paralyzed. And how am I getting paralyzed? Why can't I do this job the way I'm supposed to do it? ACA taught me, check in. And I did. And I found out I had a 4-year-old that did not want to do this presentation, did not want to be on this panel. And we played a game. And we said, okay, what can we do? You don't have to go, because how can we support you? But Sue, the adult, has to go. I made this commitment, and we've done it before. And she said, you know what? I don't want to come with you. Tuck me into bed, kiss me goodnight, and come back for me after the presentation. And I said, I can do that. And I did. And as I did that, the anxiety and the fear and the worry, they started to leave my psyche. It just disappeared. And so I learned to always check in with my inner child. What the Loving Parent Guidebook has taught me recently is I shouldn't wait until I have a trigger to check in with my inner child. I really have to check in every day. And so before I get out of bed every morning now, for the last few months, I check in with my inner child and my inner teenager. How are you guys doing, sweethearts? The other thing that I've learned in ACA is that if you think you're doing something wrong or there are mistakes, they're really nothing's wrong, nothing's mistakes. It's just it turned out differently. And so instead of having the inner critical parent sabotage me and beat me up, I say, okay, it went a little differently. Let's learn from that and let's move on and love each other. So I call it the gentle self-love in the beginning. And when I went into the laundry list stuff, it was the mature self-love. I learned to love the other laundry list just as much, and even more sometimes because they need it more. And so it made, again, all the difference in the world to me. So I was doing all of this stuff, and the other thing I would say for the learnings, I lost a couple of my superpowers. I was really disappointed. I got to tell you, I was clinging on to the hypervigilance because it gave me the edge in business to be ahead. In fact, one of my peers said, "You're about 20 years ahead." And I said, "Yeah, sometimes I was." And so I lost a little bit of that, but not much. But what I really lost and I miss is my multitasking. I'm very present in what I'm doing most of the time, even though I'm busy and I can do things. I used to multitask like a jungler, all of this stuff. I can't do that anymore. And the other thing is, I've slowed down because I was racing away from me and distracting me. And so now I slow down more. Sometimes I'm fast, but not all the time like I was before. If I'm going to go fast, I'm conscious that I'm going fast. It's not unconscious. It's not sabotaging me anymore. And I've got this sense of serenity that I have never had. I've had it in pieces. It would come and go, but it's always with me. But that doesn't mean that I don't have pain. That doesn't mean that I don't have triggers. What I have now is hope. When I came in, I was broken. I didn't have hope. I wanted to die again. Now I have hope. If I'm getting triggered and I'm in pain, it's not the end of the world. I know that there's a healing for me. And at the end of the rope, at that end, I'm going to be even better from a healing perspective than I was before. All I have to do, and this is the hardest part, stay in uncomfortableness, stay in pain, ask for help, go get support. And in the early days, I tried not to go to so many meetings sometimes, and because I was traveling for business and stuff, I noticed that as soon as I stopped going to meetings, that river of toxic stuff started coming in. And so I'm a lifer in ACA. I always will be. I'll always go to my meetings, and I'll always do my check-ins because I like who I am now. I like my life the way it is now. It's not perfect, but I like it the way it is now. And when I need to make a change, I can make a change. The other thing that I lost, my superpower, remember I said when I started my career, I said, okay, I can stay in all this dysfunction. I can get through all of this. Guess what's happening now to me? I don't want to be in dysfunction anymore. I really don't. I can do it, but I really don't want it. And it's a different way of living right now for me. And I am so grateful for ACA. So I think I'm balancing. I'm losing some of my superpowers, and I'm gaining some of my new superpowers, which are far more healthy and more sustainable for me in the years to come. And I plan on living, hopefully, for a lot longer. And I would just thinking, I'm going to pause. I'm not going to race. I'm going to pause for a second. Let's go back to sponsorship. And I said I had a sponsor, lovely lady. She taught me a lot. She taught me the number one thing I'll always remember in the harms list. Where are you, Sue? Where are you in that harms list? I didn't put myself there. I put everybody else in the world there, not me. And she taught me that. And so I'm always asking, if I'm feeling like I'm obsessing or I'm getting lost, where are you, Sue, sweetheart? Where are you, Sue, little children and teenager? Where are you guys? Let's do a check-in. Let's love each other. And let's see what we need to do. So I have hope in my life, and I have an inner clarity in my life, and I have this wonderful relationship with my children. They live in different cities now, and I got to tell you that in the early days of ACA, that if they didn't call me, if they didn't call me on Mother's Day, if they didn't call me on my birthday, I got really resentful about that. I felt really abandoned by that. I don't feel that way anymore. In fact, we have Canadian Thanksgiving for those who are Canadians. Our Canadian Thanksgiving was last weekend. And they haven't reached out to me. They're busy. My daughter's got a new job. My son's in another city, very, very busy. I said, hey, guys, what are you doing about Thanksgiving? Are you going to come home? And got back from the, and I did it with love. And I said, it's okay if you can't do it. And I got a response, Mom, I'm really sorry, I can't. I'm on these all nights, but can I talk to you, and can we see each other another time? And it was my daughter, and my son said, sorry, I really can't. I said, no problem. We'll connect on the phone, and we'll see each other probably at Christmas, and it's all okay. And you know what? I'm not faking it. I'm feeling in my core that I'm okay with it because I'm not enmeshed anymore with my children. And as a result of that, I've built trust with my children. They don't, they want to call me. They want to talk to me. Whereas, well, I got to tell you, before ACA, they didn't want to sometimes because I was so needy. I was trying to save them, don't forget. And they didn't want to be saved. They wanted to feel and they wanted to experience and do all the normal things in life. And I would say from a sponsorship perspective, the sponsor was really helpful. The other thing that I find is group sponsoring through studies has been most powerful for me. And especially when there weren't a lot of sponsors in certain topics. But even so, it is so powerful for me. In the Loving Parent Guidebook study that I'm in right now, I'm unpeeling some more layers inside of me that I didn't even know. And it's coming out. And I'm with very safe people. And we're going through this and being present for one another with love, no judgment. And that is something I really treasure. The other thing with sponsorship is service sponsorship. Adelina mentioned that. It became very clear in the early days when people were starting to step into service that they too were being triggered and they did not know what to do about it. And they were sometimes running away, sometimes creating the hugest fights that you'd ever see. And I thought, oh gosh, we got to do something about this. And so I thought, my little way I can offer a little bit of service sponsorship for people when they have a need for it. And again, like my original sponsor did, you're graduated, you're moving on, and who else are you going to help now? And I am a great, great grandma in sponsorship with many, many people around the world, actually, that I have been helpful for. And they still call now and again, hey, I got this little thing, big thing, whatever it is. No codependency, but just mutual respect and mutual trust for one another. And I found that my service aided my ACA recovery. It's actually like a step study, a laundry list study. And so I grew so much. I got to tell you, and I don't know if Derek's in the room, I grew 10 years in recovery when I was doing the 2018 ABC AWC. I got to tell you, that was a ride. That was the third one that we were doing. And it was like, I had to take off time from work for a couple of months before that. And it was just crazy. But was it a blast? If anybody was there, I don't know if anybody's in the room that was there, it was a blast. We had fun. And my only regret in that moment was that I wanted to stream Egypt and Spain and Africa because I kept getting emails from them saying, we want to join you. Can you stream us? And we didn't have the money. We didn't have the know-how. We didn't have like a Brad L right now, who's in our IT manager. And we couldn't do it at that time. But guess what happened in 2020? We went to the world, and the world came to us. And we became one global, universal family around the world. And it was awesome, and it still is awesome. And still love the face-to-face stuff, but I love the connection around the world. And 5 more minutes? Yeah, thanks. And so I would say that sponsorship is a way of doing it. But the service, I say chapter 10 is the best kept secret in ACA. How many people have really read chapter 10 and diving into it? All righty. Chapter 10 is the best kept secret of ACA, and guess why? I think I figured it out. Mary Jo's in the room right now. She might know the answer. I think it's the most advanced recovery stuff in there because they did service. And the people who were writing it were doing service. And of course, as I know for myself, it aids my recovery. And so I lived in chapter 8. I lived in chapter 10. And it has changed my life. And so I highly recommend it. But here's the kicker. You got to do what you love. It can't be an obligation. Because if it's an obligation, then it becomes like a workaholism thing, which I don't want to go back to. It has to calm my heart. And the other thing is you have to find a way that you can do it with balance, which is hard, and also with love, which is also hard sometimes. And so I find the service. I started with meeting group stuff. I started with intergroup stuff. I went into world service with Global First, and that's support for all the countries outside of Europe and Canada. And then I went into publishing because guess what? They couldn't get a BRB in their meetings. How awful is that? And I would hear the cries in South Africa. I would hear the cries in India. I would hear the cries in China. And I said, we got to do something about this. And I also heard the cries, where are all these e-books? Because we didn't have them at that point. And we had 1 or 2, but we didn't have them all. And so we got to do something about that too. And so I'm the type of person who will say, how can we get help? You know, when I took over Global in the beginning, Bangladesh was asking for help. And I said, I don't know anyone in Bangladesh, but do we know anybody in India? I know this person from 2018 AWC from India. I'm going to call him. I did. He said, I can't help you, but I know somebody else in India who can help us. I said, okay, connect me. That person was the vice chair of Global Members for a number of years before he had to retire because of health reasons. So we're all connected. All of us are connected in ways that we don't understand. And so I'll end with, somebody said to me locally, where are the people with the great experience in ACA? And out of my mouth, without me even thinking about it, I said, have you checked the service? Check the service positions, check the service areas. That's where you're going to find people with a lot of service, a lot of recovery. And the second thing I would say, and last, is from my global family. They say to me, service is where I meet my new friends and have fun around the world. It doesn't have to be work. It can be play and have fun. With that, I'll close, and thank you so much for your attention tonight. My Canadian bears, baby bear, mama bear.